The past year at Harvard has been one of historic change and reform. After a 40-year-long absence, the Reserve Officers Training Corps returned to Harvard. The move began to heal a rift between Harvard and the military and represented a milestone in the university's relationship with the armed forces. The Harvard men's basketball team also made history, winning its first ever Ivy League championship. But the team failed to advance to the NCAA tournament after losing a one-game playoff to Princeton in heartbreaking fashion. But the year in Harvard news began in Washington, D.C. with the confirmation of former dean of the law school, Elena Kagan, as a Supreme Court justice. Kagan came under fire for her tenure as dean, but was confirmed by a vote of 61 to 31. But while Kagan quickly advanced through her confirmation hearings in D.C., in Cambridge, Harvard's billion-dollar expansion in Allston remained stalled. Outraged residents of that city continue to complain that Harvard has failed to meaningfully include them in the development. And in April, Harvard announced that it had tapped Stanford professor Alan Garber as the next university provost. As Harvard's chief academic officer, Garber is charged with implementing President Drew Faust's vision of interdisciplinary education and overseeing Harvard's stalled Allston expansion. In a time of change, Allston was not the only major initiative that Harvard's administrators had to cope with. Faced by increasing book-buying costs and a shrinking budget, Harvard's libraries finally adopted a set of reforms to centralize its many branches. This year, Harvard also unveiled a major reform to its governing structure. After receiving criticism for a lack of transparency and accountability, the Harvard Corporation announced that it would nearly double the body's membership, a historic overhaul to the Western Hemisphere's oldest corporation. On the admissions front, Harvard announced that it would reinstate its early admissions program. Afraid that the college was missing out on top students, administrators decided to bring the program back to ensure that it could attract the nation's very brightest. Harvard administrators also announced that they would renovate Old Quincy as a pilot program in a broader renovation of the house system, which administrators concede is in dire need of a major facelift. The year was also one of controversy. Marty Peretz and the Social Studies program came under fire after it planned to honor the former tutor during its 40th year anniversary. Protesters seized on racist remarks made by Peretz and criticized the program for honoring a man they viewed as antithetical to its ideals. But controversy wasn't limited to the political. After the university had found him responsible for scientific misconduct, psychology professor Mark Hauser came under a hailstorm of criticism for allegedly faking experimental data. Hauser was allowed to stay on as a professor, but was barred from teaching. And in September, the serenity of the yard was suddenly punctured after a man committed suicide on the steps of Memorial Church. Mitchell L. Heisman, a 35-year-old Somerville resident, posted a sprawling suicide note online that said his death represented the fulfillment of his nihilistic philosophy. The year also provided a measure of closure in the 2009 fatal shooting in Kirkland House. Jabri Jordan Copney was sentenced to life without parole in the killing of Cambridge resident Justin Cosby. But the year was also one of loss. With the death of Reverend Peter J. Gomes, Harvard lost its unequivocal spiritual leader, a man known equally for his oratory, his groundbreaking theology, and his political activism. As a black, gay, Baptist minister, Gomes meant many things to many people. But he will perhaps be best remembered for his eloquent advocacy on behalf of the voiceless, spreading what he called the good news, and forcefully rallying on behalf of justice.